What if I told you that two residential towers in the heart of Milan, Italy, are home to over 20,000 trees, shrubs, and plants, equivalent to roughly 2 hectares of forest, and that these living, breathing facades not only provide shade and privacy for the residents inside but also produce oxygen, absorb carbon dioxide, filter particulate matter from the air, and support biodiversity in one of Europe's most polluted cities, all while standing as one of the most visually stunning and technically ambitious examples of sustainable architecture in the 21st century? Welcome back to UrbArchitect, where today we're diving into the Bosco Verticale, or vertical forest, a pair of residential high-rises designed by Stefano Boeri Architetti and completed in 2014 that has fundamentally changed the conversation about how cities can integrate nature, how buildings can contribute to environmental health, and how architecture can respond to the urgent challenges of climate change and urban density. The Bosco Verticale consists of 2 towers, one standing at 76 meters with 19 floors and the other at 110 meters with 26 floors, located in the Porta Nuova district of Milan, a formerly neglected area that has been transformed over the past 2 decades into a gleaming new business and residential quarter filled with contemporary architecture, public plazas, and green spaces. Designed by Italian architect Stefano Boeri and his firm Stefano Boeri Architetti, the towers are home to around 113 luxury apartments, but what makes them truly extraordinary is not their residential program or their height, but the fact that their facades are covered with 900 trees, ranging from 3 to 6 to 9 meters tall, along with over 5,000 shrubs and more than 11,000 perennial plants, creating a lush, multi-layered ecosystem that changes with the seasons turning green in spring and summer, ablaze with color in autumn, and bare in winter, making the buildings feel alive in a way that conventional architecture simply cannot. The trees and plants are not just decorative, they are integral to the building's environmental performance, providing natural insulation, reducing energy consumption for heating and cooling, mitigating the urban heat island effect, and creating habitats for birds, butterflies, and other urban wildlife, effectively bringing a piece of the countryside into the dense urban fabric of Milan. To understand why the Bosco Verticale matters, we need to look at the context of Milan in the early 2000s. Milan is one of Italy's largest and most economically important cities, a global center for fashion, design, and finance, but it is also one of the most polluted cities in Europe, with air quality that regularly exceeds safe limits for particulate matter and nitrogen oxides due to heavy traffic, industrial activity, and the city's location in the Po Valley, which traps pollutants and prevents them from dispersing. By the mid-2000s, there was growing awareness in Milan and across Europe about the need to address environmental challenges, to make cities more sustainable, and to integrate green infrastructure into urban planning. This was the era when concepts like green roofs, urban forests, and biophilic design were gaining traction, and when architects and planners were beginning to think seriously about how buildings and cities could contribute to environmental health rather than just consuming resources and generating pollution. Milan had a long history of innovative architecture and urban planning, from the Gothic grandeur of the Duomo to the modernist masterpieces of the mid-20th century, but by the 2000s, much of the city's post-war development had prioritized density and efficiency over livability and environmental quality, resulting in a built environment that was often gray, congested, and disconnected from nature. The Porta Nuova district, where the Bosco Verticale is located, was part of a major urban regeneration project that began in the early 2000s with the goal of transforming a rundown area of abandoned factories and railway yards into a vibrant, mixed-use neighborhood that would set a new standard for sustainable urban development. The project involved multiple architects and developers, including Cesare Pelli, who designed the UniCredit Tower, the tallest building in Italy, and it was conceived as a showcase for cutting-edge architecture and green urbanism. Stefano Boeri, who had established himself as one of Italy's leading architects and urban thinkers, saw the Porta Nuova project as an opportunity to test a radical idea that he had been developing for years. The concept of a vertical forest, a high-rise building that would function as a living ecosystem, integrating trees and plants into the facade, in a way that went far beyond the cosmetic greenwashing that was becoming common in sustainable architecture. Boeri was influenced by a range of ideas, from the ecological urbanism of landscape architects like Ian McHarg to the biophilic design principles of E.O. Wilson, and he was convinced that cities needed to find ways to reintegrate nature at scale if they were going to remain livable in the face of climate change, population growth, and environmental degradation. The design process for the Bosco Verticale began around 2007, and from the start, Boeri and his team knew that creating a true vertical forest would require not just architectural innovation, but also expertise in botany, horticulture, engineering, and environmental science. The concept was straightforward in principle. Instead of placing trees and plants on the ground or on rooftops, why not integrate them into the facade of a high-rise building, creating a vertical landscape that would provide all the environmental benefits of a traditional forest while occupying a minimal footprint? But translating this idea into a buildable structure required solving a host of technical challenges, from selecting plant species that could survive at height and in containers to designing an irrigation system that could deliver water to hundreds of trees and thousands of plants distributed across dozens of floors, to ensuring that the weight of the soil, plants, and water would not compromise the structural integrity of the building. The design of the towers themselves is relatively simple. Reinforced concrete structures with generous balconies that project from the facade, creating horizontal platforms for the planters that contain the trees and vegetation. The balconies are not uniform but vary in size and configuration, creating a staggered, sculptural profile that adds visual interest and ensures that each apartment has access to outdoor space and greenery. The planters are custom-designed concrete boxes, lined with waterproof membranes and filled with a lightweight soil mix that provides adequate drainage while retaining enough moisture to support the plants. Each planter is carefully sized to accommodate the root systems of the specific trees and shrubs it contains, and the planters are integrated into the structure of the balconies, supported by the concrete slabs and tied into the building's load-bearing framework. The facade is clad in a combination of glass and textured concrete, providing a neutral backdrop that allows the greenery to take center stage, and the overall aesthetic is one of elegance and restraint, with the architecture serving as a framework for the living, changing landscape of the plants. Inside, the apartments are spacious and light-filled, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offer views of the surrounding city and the greenery on the balconies, and the interiors are finished to a high standard with natural materials like wood and stone that complement the organic character of the facade. The technical challenges of building the Bosco Verticale were formidable, starting with the selection of plant species. Boeri worked closely with botanists and horticulturists to identify trees and shrubs that could thrive in the conditions found on a high-rise balcony, which include exposure to wind, limited soil volume, and significant variations in temperature and sunlight depending on the orientation and height of the balcony. The team eventually selected over 90 different species, chosen for their ability to tolerate these conditions, their seasonal interest, and their contribution to biodiversity, with a mix of deciduous trees that provide shade in summer and allow sunlight in winter, evergreen shrubs that provide year-round greenery, and flowering plants that attract pollinators. Some of the species include hornbeam, oak, ash, cherry, and olive trees, along with shrubs like viburnum, cotoneaster, and lavender, and the diversity of species was a deliberate choice to create a resilient ecosystem that could adapt to changing conditions and support a wide range of wildlife. The irrigation system is another critical component of the building's design, because keeping hundreds of trees and thousands of plants alive and healthy requires a reliable and efficient water supply. The system draws water from the building's gray water recycling system, which collects and treats wastewater from sinks and showers, and from rainwater harvesting systems installed on the roofs of the towers, reducing the building's reliance on municipal water supplies and minimizing its environmental footprint. The water is distributed through a network of pipes and drip irrigation lines that run through the planters, delivering water directly to the root zones of the plants with minimal waste, and the system is controlled by sensors and timers that adjust the flow based on weather conditions, soil moisture levels, and the specific needs of different plant species. The entire system is monitored and maintained by a team of specialized gardeners, known as flying gardeners, who are trained in arboriculture and who use climbing equipment and harnesses to access the balconies and care for the plants, pruning, fertilizing, and replacing plants as needed to ensure that the vertical forest remains healthy and vibrant. The structural implications of adding so much vegetation to a high-rise building are significant, because the weight of the planters, soil, water, and plants adds substantial load to the balconies and the overall structure. Each tower had to be engineered to support this additional weight, which required robust reinforced concrete frames and careful calculation of load distribution to ensure that the balconies could safely carry the planters without deflecting or compromising the building's stability. The weight of a fully planted balcony can be considerable, with large trees and their associated soil and water adding several tons of load, and this had to be accounted for in the design of the structural slabs, columns, and foundations. The buildings are also designed to withstand wind loads, which are a particular concern for high-rise vegetation because trees and shrubs act like sails, catching the wind and creating additional lateral forces on the structure, so the planters are secured to the balconies and the trees are staked and supported to prevent them from being uprooted or damaged during storms. The environmental performance of the Bosco Verticale is impressive and has been extensively studied since the buildings were completed. The vegetation provides a range of ecosystem services, including cooling the building and the surrounding microclimate through evapotranspiration, which is the process by which plants release water vapor into the air, lowering temperatures and increasing humidity, and this natural cooling reduces the need for air conditioning in summer, cutting energy consumption and associated carbon emissions. The plants also act as a natural insulation layer, buffering the building's envelope from temperature extremes and reducing heat loss in winter and heat gain in summer. In terms of air quality, the trees and plants absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen through photosynthesis, with estimates suggesting that the Bosco Verticale produces enough oxygen to support the annual needs of several families and absorbs roughly 30 tons of carbon dioxide per year, and the vegetation also filters particulate matter and other pollutants from the air, helping to improve air quality in the immediate vicinity of the buildings and contributing to a healthier urban environment. The vertical forest also supports biodiversity, providing habitat for birds, butterflies, and insects that would otherwise struggle to find suitable environments in the dense urban core of Milan, and the variety of plant species creates a complex, multi-layered habitat that mimics the structure of a natural forest, offering food, shelter, and nesting sites for urban wildlife. When the Bosco Verticale was completed and residents began moving in during 2014, the response was immediate and overwhelmingly positive. The project received international acclaim and won numerous prestigious awards, including the International High Rise Award in 2014 and a special prize at the CTBUH Skyscraper Awards, and it was featured in exhibitions, publications, and conferences around the world as a groundbreaking example of sustainable architecture and urban greening. The buildings became an instant landmark in Milan, photographed endlessly and appearing in travel guides, design magazines, and social media feeds, and they helped to raise the profile of the Porta Nuova district and to establish Milan as a leader in sustainable urban development. For Stefano Boeri, the Bosco Verticale was a career-defining project that demonstrated the viability of his vertical forest concept and that opened the door to a series of similar projects in cities around the world, including plans for vertical forests in Lausanne, Utrecht, Cairo, Nanjing, and elsewhere, making the idea of integrating large-scale vegetation into high-rise buildings a global movement. The project also had a significant impact on architectural discourse, challenging the conventional separation between buildings and landscape and demonstrating that architecture can be a vehicle for ecological regeneration rather than just a consumer of resources. And it inspired a new generation of architects and designers to think more ambitively about how to integrate nature into the built environment. But the Bosco Verticale has not been without its critics. Some have questioned the cost and complexity of the project, pointing out that the apartments are expensive and that the ongoing maintenance required to keep the vertical forest healthy is labor-intensive and costly, making this approach to green architecture accessible only to wealthy residents and clients, and raising questions about whether the model can be scaled and adapted for more affordable housing. Others have criticized the project as a form of greenwashing, arguing that while the vegetation is undeniably impressive, the environmental benefits are somewhat limited when you consider the overall carbon footprint of constructing and operating two luxury high-rise towers, and that the focus on high-profile, photogenic projects can distract from the more fundamental changes needed to make cities truly sustainable, such as reducing car dependence, investing in public transit, and preserving existing green spaces. There have also been practical challenges, with some reports of maintenance issues, concerns about the long-term health of the trees, and questions about whether the plants can truly thrive in the harsh conditions of a high-rise balcony, or whether they will gradually decline and need to be replaced more frequently than anticipated. Despite these critiques, the Bosco Verticale remains a landmark project and a powerful demonstration of what is possible when architecture, engineering, and ecology come together in pursuit of a common goal. The buildings show that it is technically feasible to integrate large-scale vegetation into high-rise structures, that the environmental benefits are real and measurable, and that people are drawn to buildings that connect them with nature, even in the heart of a dense urban environment. The project has also sparked important conversations about the role of architecture in addressing climate change, about the responsibilities of architects to design for environmental performance as well as aesthetics, and about the potential for buildings to contribute positively to the health and resilience of cities. As we wrap up, it's worth reflecting on what the Bosco Verticale means for the future of architecture and urbanism. In a world where more than half of the global population now lives in cities, and where that proportion is expected to increase to 70% or more by mid-century, the question of how to make cities livable, sustainable, and resilient is one of the most urgent challenges we face. The Bosco Verticale offers one vision of what that future could look like: a future where buildings are not just passive shelters but active participants in urban ecosystems, where architecture enhances rather than degrades environmental quality, and where the boundary between city and nature becomes blurred and permeable. It's not a perfect solution, and it's not a one-size-fits-all answer to the challenges of sustainable urbanism, but it is a bold, innovative, and inspiring example of what can be achieved when architects are willing to think beyond conventional solutions and to embrace the complexity and beauty of the natural world. For architecture students and young architects, the Bosco Verticale offers valuable lessons about the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration, about the need to engage with experts in fields like botany, engineering, and environmental science, about the technical challenges of translating conceptual ideas into buildable structures, and about the power of architecture to inspire and to catalyze change. So if you ever find yourself in Milan, make sure to visit the Bosco Verticale, to see these living towers in person, to appreciate the scale and ambition of what Stefano Boeri and his team achieved, and to imagine what your city might look like if every building were conceived as an opportunity to bring nature back into the urban fabric. And if you enjoyed this exploration of one of the most innovative and influential buildings of the past decade, consider subscribing to UrbArchitect and sharing your thoughts in the comments below, because we'd love to hear what you think about vertical forests, sustainable architecture, and the future of our cities. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what architecture can be.